Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. One of the conversations that I love having the most inside of our industry is around the world of security. Because what's unique about the world of security is that a lot of our technology literally saves lives every day. Whether it's things like industrial access control systems, but all the way down to things like residential technologies, whether that be intrusion detection or CO2 detection or fire detection. And what you see in the industry is that a lot of those technologies that start in the home find their way to some of those larger and more enterprise applications because of things like user preference and user experience. So I wanted to dig in a little bit deeper in that world today and bring on somebody who knows far more about that world than I do. And that's Isis Wu, president of Global Residential Fire and Safety over at Carrier. Isis, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Isis, I gotta ask, right? As somebody who is a fan of technology in general, I love seeing, like I mentioned off the top, I love seeing how technology really continues to permeate its way in the home, whether that's through detection, intrusion systems, CO2 systems, things like that. But I want to ask, at a high level, where would you say we are right now, maybe in the life cycle, but also in sort of that demand process from some of those technologies that you see in the home?
Yeah, so, in the safety space in particular, safety, where I specialize, people don't really think about it all the time. It's not top of mind for any of us. We're not looking up at our ceiling in the home, wondering if we have the right smoke detector, if it's working or not, if we're protected in case of a fire. We just don't think about it. And it's important to spend time understanding consumer habits so that we can design products that better meet the needs that they have and better protect them at the same time. And, here's a little factoid for you. 60% of home fires are due to human error, and 40% of people think they have more likely chance to win the lottery or get struck by lightning than experience a home fire. So but actually it's the most common disaster that people face in the US in their homes. So there's a disconnect between how important of an issue it is and how people perceive it. And decades ago, you had something like 20 minutes to get out of a house in case of a fire because of the materials used to build the house, the fabric, and the furniture. But now you only have 2 minutes to get out because fires are burning faster. There's different kinds of fires, smoldering wood to, fast burning fires. And oftentimes the wood, the smoke knocks you out before the fire itself does. And so you've got all of this industry dynamic going on. And then you also have the alarms themselves. The old technology will cause nuisance alarms a lot of the times, which is when you're cooking and there's no real fire and it goes off. And it's annoying. And then we as homeowners, consumers, disconnect our devices in frustration. And another thing that a lot of consumers relate to is when the alarm beeps in the middle of the night,
Oh,
because,
uh-oh.
right? Have you had this experience, right?
In the last month, yes.
Oh no. But now, don't be too annoyed. It's because it's beeping because its battery died or it needs to be replaced. It's reminding you that it's important to upgrade, make sure you have the safest products and make sure that you have that protection. But oftentimes, as it happens, you don't care. You probably just yank it off the ceiling or use a broom, what have you, just get it out, right? Get it to stop sounding. And that actually leaves a lot of people protected in their home. So, what are we doing about all this to address how fire safety has evolved over time, and the pain points that consumers have? We've actually launched a new line of products offering enhanced sensing technology and very advanced electronics and firmware and proprietary algorithms to improve particle discrimination that reduces the false alarms, that detects all kinds of fires, both the fast burning and the smoldering wood. And our products offer 3 times the precision and 25% faster detection than the next best alternative. And this is the type of technology that is evolving over time, and that has to evolve over time in order to meet the needs of modern consumers.
Well, it's interesting, and I love that you bring up kind of the distinction between obviously kind of the legacy, I would say the nuisance style, like you mentioned, and the more modern sort of detection systems and things like that. And look, I'll be the first to admit the smoke detectors in my house are 15 years old, right? And that's not good. I need to go change those tonight. But one of the challenges, you talk about the end user preference and experience and things like that. The challenge is that maybe the end user doesn't always know or understand what the best practices are, or only interact, like you mentioned, with those systems when it's either a nuisance or, heaven forbid, a disaster. But what would you say from a user perspective, are some of the advantages maybe of even finding and intentionally adapting to some of these newer technologies?
Oh, many, many advantages, right? So, with our new detection technology, especially when it's more precise and faster, you have more time to get out of your home when the alarm sounds and you have to get out for a fire. And our devices have saved many lives. We get testimonials all the time. So make sure you're getting the right products, and then also make sure you are putting them in the right places in the house and you have enough of them. Another issue with safety is that less than 30% of the US households have enough of the devices in their homes in the right places by NFPA standards. So you should have a device, a smoke detector on every floor, in every gathering area, hallways, living rooms, bedrooms. You should have a CO detector outside every bedroom. You should have a fire extinguisher on every floor, in the kitchen, in the garage. And most of us don't have all of that. In fact, a lot of homes don't even have one single device that works. And so there is a huge gap in consumer awareness and education and what you need to keep yourself safe. And so you should know all of these things, and you should then have the right device and make sure it's working. And this is where our smart devices, which we've launched a whole series 2 years ago, get at even more of that value added consumer need.
Well, I want to ask about those smart devices, right? Because I've had the opportunity throughout kind of just my career to get to talk to a lot of different places and see technologies, especially in the home, evolve. Whether it's HVAC, whether it's locks and intrusion, whether it's automation and lighting, things like that. The fire and safety side of things isn't immune to that either, right? There's a lot of smart technologies, whether it's remote alerting or things like that, continue to find their way in sort of these smart interfaces. What are some of the ways that you've seen a lot of these fire and safety systems evolve to better support not only the user experience, obviously, but maybe that holistic smart ecosystem?
Yeah, so a lot has happened. You might know that Google Nest is out there as probably what consumers would think about as the smart smoke detector brand that they recognize. And they've been out there for a number of years. But the penetration of smart in our space has been very low for a number of different reasons. One of the biggest reasons is that price point. If a smart smoke detector costs $120, and you have to have 5 of them in your house, that's pretty prohibitively expensive to just keep the basic level of safeness in your home, right? And so that counts out a lot of American consumers to buy those devices. So that leads to then a very low penetration of smart devices in our category. The second limitation is what I just talked about. When you have modern burning fires and materials and all kinds of different needs that the consumer and the technology and the homes need for fire detection. And we have the new UL 8th edition standard out there that is trying to address these new needs to keep you safer in the home. That technology bar is extremely high. And so at its core, beyond the smart piece of it, you have to have a really good detection device that can discriminate all of these particles, that can detect all of these different types of fires, and then alert you in the least time possible to get out of the house. And a lot of people out there, a lot of other players out there in the market can't meet those standards. And so that is a big barrier as well. And now, obviously, we have figured it out, and we do have a really, really strong new product line that meets all of those criteria. And then once you get beyond that initial barrier, then you get the benefits of what that smart device can do for you. And then you have to tackle the consumer experience with that smart device, how it integrates into your other smart home ecosystem, whether you are commissioning it and it's smooth and it's not giving you a lot of issues. Everybody knows that if you try to install something and it takes you half an hour for a smart device, you're going to return it, right? So all of these areas we have to address, and these are almost table stakes to be able to have smart takeoff in our category. But if you can address all of these different needs, then you get a lot of advantages. So for example, our smart lineup, and certainly our next updated lineup next year will be able to do a number of things for you. If you're in the house and a nuisance alarm happens, you can shut off the alarm through the app instead of climbing up a ladder. If you put the location of your smoke detector into your app as you're commissioning it, then if that alarm goes off, you know exactly where the issue is. If you have other properties that you own, or you have parents or your kids that you want to make sure that they're safe, you can install the alarms in their properties and add it to your app, and you can see if it's working, if there are issues. And if you're woken up in the middle of the night because of an end of life beeping with a smart alarm that actually knows where you're located, what your time zone is, and when you're sleeping, it's actually going to wait until you're awake to do that to you. And then we have a whole new array and broader set of detectors. For example, the first industry ever IAQ integrated device with smoke and carbon monoxide. You have now these multifunctional, multi-sensing devices, and then add even more value to you as you look at your indoor air quality over time in your home, and we're giving you recommendations of how to improve it, and so on and so forth. So the smart scope and what it can do for us is really unlimited.
Isis, I love that you kind of brought up the sort of the installation and support and usage side of things, because as a lot of these in-home technologies evolve to become smart, the user community and I would say the buyer community in a lot of cases evolves and tends to trust folks like electricians and security technicians and HVAC technicians a little bit more from an installation and support standpoint. Have you found maybe that people who are more willing to adapt some of these smarter solutions, especially from a fire and safety standpoint, typically will trust that to be done through a specialty integrator? Or do you find typically that they want to go buy it from a Home Depot, or is there a little bit of variability there?
Actually, apart from new installations in the home, so if you're a contractor with a new housing start, new build or a new housing sale, and you have to meet certain codes, only in those situations where a specialty contractor is installing it in your home. Most of the volume in the market, 85% of it, is replacement volume. And that most of it is being bought by the consumers themselves when the alarm goes beeping and you go to Home Depot looking for a detector to replace the one that you have. And so a lot of this is DIY. I read so many consumer reviews that say, because we're not technicians, we're not electricians, and if we don't know how to wire a detector, which I personally struggle with these, you might struggle with it a little bit, and you might bring a technician into your home to help you do it. But a lot of folks nowadays go on YouTube, right? Can do it themselves, and that's certainly going to continue.
One of the questions I had too, we when you were talking about it earlier, you were talking about things like UL certification, and I want to ask too, especially as we introduce whether it's smart technologies or just really new building standards and codes and things like that. How have kind of the certifications and compliance side of a lot of these safety devices and detector devices evolved? Are they still largely the same, or have they updated some of those standards and best practices as we step through kind of next generations of technology?
Yeah, they've definitely been updated, and this year is the biggest update in over 10 years. So there are a few different levels of codes and standards and regulations. Building codes and standards obviously play a very critical role in fire safety, establishing requirements for the design, construction, and maintenance of buildings to reduce the risk of fires and protect people and assets, including the home. But at the end of the day, we as consumers choose what homes we buy and what we put in it. And unfortunately, because of other benefits modern materials offer, like durability, aesthetic appeal, functionality, and their impact on how fires can form is on the bottom of our list of awareness and consideration. So we pick a lot of things in our house that actually lead to more fire risk. And this is why UL, the Fire Safety Product Standard, particularly in North America, updated their requirements for the first time in over 10 years in a very significant way. For example, the 8th edition standard, which is what we are on right now, has added a lot of different fire types and testing for those fires and updated sensing criteria to account for modern home fires. It's added new testing for nuisance alarms, especially related to cooking. And there are additional requirements around surge immunity, end-of-life signals, firmware requirements, all to increase the robustness of the product. And because of these updated product standards, consumers will see significantly better performance, products that last longer, and certainly buy our products that we've just launched. And in fact, our new product lineup leapfrogs the current standard, which is 8th edition, and already meet the next level of requirements, which is 9th edition. And 9th edition includes a whole new slew of additional benefits and more stringent requirements like stability tests, more reliability, testing for RF interconnected products, and requirements for drift compensation, which ensures that the device performance doesn't change over time, and many other benefits and other product requirements that others out there in the market don't have. And in terms of regulations, which is separate from the product standards, the requirement for having smoke detectors in the home is actually a relatively recent phenomenon, believe it or not. And even more recent is the requirement for, in some states, for having 10-year sealed battery alarms, because oftentimes people have alarms that run out of batteries, and instead of replacing them, they just forget about it and then leave their homes unprotected. So we work at Kidde with a lot of stakeholders to drive legislation, regulation that are beneficial for the consumers, to bring that education and awareness more broadly. So for example, a lot of states still don't have the 10-year sealed alarm requirement. Kansas still doesn't require CO alarms, and CO is the silent killer, and we've seen a lot of news lately about those CO-related deaths. So we see lots of opportunity to work with like-minded influencers and drive the adoption and enforcement of regulations. And I talked earlier about NFPA and the 30% of homes being underprotected. And all of this working together should help us get the right technology and protect consumers more in their homes.
The thing that really strikes me too, especially when we talk about technology in the home, is I love that you bring up the Kidde name, a company that's been well known for a long time in prevention, security, safety, things like that. And one of the challenges of whether it's introducing smart technology or just having natural attrition in the product life cycle is that you see a lot of these folks come in who try to be disruptors, who may not be up to code in one thing, but they're cheaper, right? They try and fight on price, and they try and but they lack maybe some of the preventative measures. They lack some of the legislative measures, like you mentioned. I want to ask, even obviously as a homeowner, as somebody who has these conversations on a regular basis, what other benefits do people get partnering with folks like Kidde or Carrier versus maybe some of those new disruptor types who are going to sort of be a flash in the pan? What are some of those benefits and differences between those companies?
Yeah, so for the consumer, safety is number one, right? And we've seen, even in the last few weeks, the CPSC has warned consumers to not buy and to have customers on the channel side delist Chinese made, a particular Chinese branded smoke detector, because they just don't work. And that is the worst thing you can possibly do, is to buy a cheap safety device and then not have it work at a very critical moment in your life. And that's happened to a number of Chinese branded detectors. And, for example, as an established player and as a player who really, really care about this and lead the industry in terms of safety, we have voluntary recalls on our product just so we make sure you have the best product out there. We've recalled products that have no safety issue whatsoever, but maybe they give you a little bit more nuisance alarm than what we feel you should be getting, because we don't want you to have that nuisance and then to pull things off of the wall, because that's actually unsafe for you. So we're very proactive in making sure that you're getting a really, really good quality safe device. And because we're an established player, because we have the channel penetration and we work very closely with our big channel partners, we know how to address issues when it comes, whether it be product support, consumer complaints, returns. If there is a recall, we're working with all the customers and consumers and regulatory agencies to make sure that you're being made aware. And none of the other types of players can provide that.
Well, it's really peace of mind, right? That's what you're selling. And at the end of the day, obviously, look, we want technology that works and is preventative and responds when needed. But at the end of the day, look, our technology here in this case is designed to make the user, make the home buyer, the homeowner feel safe and have that peace of mind, right, knowing that it's something as simple as knowing that their battery's not going to be a nuisance to them whenever they're trying to sleep or wake their kid up. Obviously extrapolated all the way to making sure that, hey, if there is an emergency, there's proactivity there. There's things that are happening, whether it's calling the police, whether it's a mobile alert, things like that. And I think that's one of the challenges that a lot of the disruptor types into all technological industries, not just specifically this one, have a challenge with is okay, how do I go beyond just sort of the technology and build that relationship, build that peace of mind, build advocacy, have customer support, establish relationships with the channel, things like that. And I love to see that that's something that Kidde focuses on, really, because you guys do such a good job of not only providing peace of mind, but really giving that end user, the ability to sleep at night knowing that if something does go wrong, they're going to get alerted about it.
Yeah, I'll give you another specific example as we were talking about smart. You know, how do you know your smoke alarms are working? It's sitting up there
Mm,
on the ceiling.
yeah.
You don't know if it's been commissioned properly or connected properly. And in particular, when you travel and stay in places like Airbnb or other third-party properties that aren't hotels, which are much more stringently regulated in terms of fire safety precautions, you might see in the Airbnb app that there are smoke alarms at the property. But when you get there, those alarms might be sitting on a dresser or pulled off the walls or disconnected. And I'll tell you, in just about every experience I've had recently, because I'm a huge Airbnb fan, that has been the case. The alarms were sitting on the dresser. So you as an occupant are not protected. The property owner is not protected. And if anything happens, Airbnb's reputation gets damaged. Same thing for CO, which has been in the news in a big way recently. So that's another benefit of that control, that knowledge, that awareness with smart devices in particular. You can actually know if it's working or not.
Well, that's incredible too. I hadn't even thought of that, right? From almost a facilities and building management position as well. You have that, occupant safety. You have that occupant peace of mind as well. And I want to give you the last word before we wrap. Looking into the future a little bit, and I know we talked a little bit about smart technologies and things like that. But how do you see technologies, whether it's AI, smart connected devices, continuing to impact things like fire and safety devices moving into the next 5, 10 years?
Yeah. Lots. There's a lot of innovations to be had ahead of us. One of the biggest development in the safety space, in my space, was using firmware and algorithms, not just electronics, not just components and hardware, to discriminate particles. And as you get even more advanced with algorithms and AI in particular, we want to be in the realm of prevention. There are companies out there who can prevent fires from happening before they happen, because they've actually looked at the electrical sparks within the home and see that there is a trend toward a certain dangerous direction, and then they'll actually say, all right, you need to go call an electrician and look at that particular space in your home right now, right? Or we have water leak detection, and wouldn't it be great if we can prevent the water leak from happening by assessing certain trends? Or mold, right? We don't want mold to grow. We have IAQ now in our detectors. Can we look at certain conditions that make mold growth likely, and then alert the consumer and have them take care of it before it starts? And so all of these things I would love for us to explore much more in the future, with technology and advancement in AI in particular, on the prevention side, on making sure that we're seeing the patterns and prevent hazards from happening before they happen.
Well, Isis, that's incredible to hear it. And I know that, gathering those data points and things like that, you see a trend towards users and buyers willing to, adopt a lot of these technologies and leverage AI, especially when it comes to things like proactivity and safety. Because at the end of the day, when you're able to prevent something from happening, whether it be a disaster or potential loss of life, it's far better than having to endure the stress otherwise. But I'll tell you what, Isis, we appreciate you coming on the show, and we look forward not only to hearing more about some of the great things happening at Kidde and Carrier, but also seeing you hopefully out at shows like GSX and ISC West, and having conversations about the macro industry as a whole. But thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Ben. I enjoyed it.
Well, fantastic. And thank you all for tuning in. Like and subscribe. Check us out next time on the show.